The impossible signal. The Nexus Collective had governed the civilized galaxy for 8,000 standard rotations. Their crystal spires dominated 23 core worlds, and their influence stretched across 15 sentient species. In their grand chambers of translucent light, the High Council watched over their domain with calculating precision. Every planet, every species, every decision was measured against the eternal doctrine of preservation. Nothing was allowed to disrupt the delicate balance they had crafted over millennia. When the emergency beacon first pierced through subspace, it was dismissed as stellar noise. The signal originated from Sector 89J, a region marked with blood-red warnings on every star chart, but the pattern repeated, growing stronger with each pulse. Mathematical sequences wrapped in desperation, calling across the void in the universal language of mathematics. Impossible. Director Valen breathed, her triple-jointed fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The signal originates from Ethra. The name sent ripples of unease through the observation chamber. Ethra, once a paradise world with crystalline forests and floating cities, had been quarantined for 2 centuries. A plague of unknown origin had ravaged the planet, turning its atmosphere into a toxic soup and reducing its civilization to whispers in the dark. The Nexus had sealed the system, declaring it a permanent exclusion zone. No ship was permitted within 10 light-years of its boundaries. Someone survived. Technical Overseer Krex confirmed, his scaled hide shifting to display patterns of disbelief. The message structure indicates advanced technology, possibly a remaining shelter system. The High Council convened with unprecedented speed. In their chamber of pure light, 12 species debated the impossible request encoded in the signal. Help us. We cannot risk contamination. The Thurilian delegate insisted, his gaseous form swirling with agitation. The Atheran plague killed billions. One breach could doom the entire collective. The protocols are clear, added the Zenari representative, her chitinous armor clicking with each word. No contact with quarantine worlds. No exceptions. The debate raged for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Nexus Collective would not respond. The signal would be logged, studied, and ultimately ignored. It was the logical choice, the safe choice, the choice that had kept their civilization stable for millennia. They never considered that someone else might be listening. In the outer spiral arm of the galaxy, on a world the Nexus had classified as marginal for intelligent life development, a different kind of monitoring station detected the signal. Earth's deep space communications array, a patchwork of dishes and quantum receivers scattered across 6 continents, picked up the alien distress call. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her screens in disbelief. 3 years of searching for extraterrestrial signals, and now this, a clear, repeating pattern originating from a system her databases didn't even list. She ran the analysis again, then called her supervisor. Within hours, the United Earth Space Agency had assembled an emergency meeting. Unlike the sterile deliberations of the Nexus Council, this gathering crackled with energy and barely contained excitement. Humanity had spent centuries looking to the stars, and now the stars were calling for help. The signal's definitely artificial, Chen explained to the packed room. It's using prime number sequences to establish intelligence, followed by what appears to be coordinate data and, well, if I'm reading this right, it's a plea for assistance. General Marcus Rodriguez leaned forward, his weathered face serious. What kind of assistance? Medical, possibly evacuation. The mathematical models suggest their life support systems are failing. The room fell silent. Everyone present knew what this meant. First contact, but not the kind anyone had imagined. Not a grand meeting of civilizations, but a desperate cry in the dark. How far? Asked Director Patel. 47 light-years. With our new fusion drive prototypes, we could reach them in 18 months. The implications hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just about helping aliens. It was about announcing humanity's presence on the galactic stage. They had no idea what waited out there, what dangers they might face, what protocols they might be breaking. "We have to try," Captain James Morrison spoke from the back of the room. The former astronaut had been advocating for deep space missions for years. "If we can help, we should help. That's what makes us human." The debate was shorter than anyone expected. Perhaps it was the collective memory of times when humanity had needed help and received it. Perhaps it was the simple truth that when someone calls for help, you answer. Within 72 hours, the decision was made. The rescue mission was designated Phoenix 1. Engineers worked around the clock to retrofit the experimental Starship Endeavour with medical facilities and extended life support. Scientists developed protocols for dealing with unknown pathogens. Volunteers flooded in from every nation, but only 12 could go. The crew was carefully selected: doctors, engineers, xenobiologists, and pilots. Each understood they might not return. Each signed on anyway. Captain Morrison led them, his steady presence anchoring the team through grueling preparation. 6 months later, Phoenix 1 launched from lunar orbit. The fusion drives ignited, pushing the ship to velocities no human had ever achieved. As Earth dwindled to a blue dot behind them, the crew entered cryosleep for the long journey ahead. The Nexus Collective detected the launch but dismissed it as irrelevant. The primitive species from Sol 3 couldn't possibly reach Ethra, and even if they did, they would surely perish in the attempt. The Council filed the incident under minor anomalies and returned to their orderly administration of the galaxy. They had no idea what humans were capable of. As Phoenix 1 raced through the void, the signal from Ethra continued its lonely broadcast. In the dying world's last functioning shelter, Chief Scientist Lyra watched her people fade one by one. Their crystalline bodies, once radiant with inner light, now flickered like guttering candles. She maintained the beacon not out of hope, but out of duty. Someone should know they had existed. Someone should remember. She never imagined that someone would answer. The human ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Aethran system 18 months after launch. Immediately, proximity alarms screamed warnings. The radiation levels were off the charts. The debris field around the planet spoke of catastrophic destruction, and the atmosphere readings showed a toxic cocktail that would kill unprotected humans in seconds. "Jesus," whispered Dr. Elena Volkov, the mission's chief medical officer. "How is anyone alive down there?" Captain Morrison studied the readings grimly. "That's what we're here to find out. Begin scanning for the signal source." As the Endeavour moved carefully through the debris field, the crew couldn't help but stare at the dead world below. Once beautiful cities lay in ruins, their crystal spires shattered and dark. Vast forests had turned to ash, and the oceans had transformed into sludge. It was a vision of apocalypse on a planetary scale. "Got it," called out Lieutenant Kim. "There's a power source about 300 meters underground. Faint life signs. Captain, I'm reading at least 50 survivors." The bridge fell silent. 50 lives in a tomb world. The mission parameters had assumed they might find a handful at most. "There's more," Kim continued. "I'm detecting automated defense systems. They're targeting us. Ancient weapons platforms, their power reserves nearly depleted, locked onto the human ship." In the shelter below, Lyra's sensory crystals flared with alarm. "Visitors. Impossible. The plague barriers should have kept everyone away. They're charging weapons," reported the tactical officer. "Should we raise shields?" Morrison made a decision that would echo through history. "No. Broadcast on all frequencies. Let them know we're here to help." The message went out in every language the humans had decoded from the original signal, accompanied by the universal mathematical sequences for peace and aid. For long moments, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the weapons powered down. In her bunker, Lyra trembled with emotions her people rarely displayed. Against all logic, against all probability, someone had heard. Someone had come. "Prepare the shuttle," Morrison ordered. "Full hazmat protocols. We're going down there." The rescue team descended through toxic clouds and radioactive storms. Their shuttle's shields strained against the hostile environment, but human engineering held firm. They landed near the entrance to the underground shelter, their lights cutting through the perpetual gloom. What they found inside would change everything. The bunker doors, designed to withstand planetary bombardment, creaked open at their approach. Beyond lay a maze of corridors, their walls lined with failing life support systems and flickering lights. The rescue team moved carefully, their suits protecting them from contamination levels that would have killed most species instantly. They found the survivors in the central chamber. 50 Etherans, their crystalline bodies dim and fractured, huddled around a failing power core. At their center stood Lyra, her form more stable than the others, but still showing signs of severe degradation. First contact wasn't made with speeches or ceremonies. It began with Dr. Volkov rushing forward to stabilize a failing Etheran child, her medical scanners adapting on the fly to alien physiology. It continued with engineers jury-rigging power supplies to boost the failing life support. It concluded with Captain Morrison extending his gloved hand to Lyra in the universal gesture of greeting. The Aetherans had sent their signal expecting, at best, someone to record their passing. Instead, they found a species willing to dive into hell itself to save strangers. As the humans worked tirelessly to stabilize the survivors and prepare them for evacuation, something unprecedented occurred. The Nexus Collective detected the human activity on Aethra. For the first time in recorded history, a quarantine had been breached. Emergency protocols activated across their domain. A fleet was dispatched to contain the situation, to prevent contamination from spreading, to maintain order at any cost. They were about to learn that humans had different ideas about order, about cost, and about what was worth preserving. As the collective fleet raced toward Aethra, the human rescue team worked against time. They had found not just survivors, but hope. The Aetherans carried within their crystalline matrices the key to curing their own plague. They just needed somewhere safe to implement it. Somewhere the Nexus Collective would never allow them to go. Captain Morrison made another historic decision. They would take the Aetherans to Earth. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy. The orderly Nexus, convinced of their righteousness, racing to prevent catastrophe. The chaotic humans, driven by compassion, determined to save lives regardless of the risk. And caught between them, the last survivors of Aethra, whose fate would determine the future of interstellar relations. As Phoenix 1 prepared for emergency departure with its precious cargo, sensors detected the incoming collective fleet. The humans had hours, perhaps less, before the most powerful military force in the galaxy arrived to stop them. In the ship's medical bay, Aetheran and human worked side by side for the first time in galactic history. In the command center, Captain Morrison plotted a course that would take them through hazards no sane pilot would attempt. And in the depths of space, two philosophies rushed toward collision. The Nexus believed in preservation through isolation. Humans believed in survival through connection. The next few hours would determine which philosophy would shape the future of the galaxy. Into the death zone. The Endeavor's engines roared to life as Phoenix 1 prepared for emergency departure. Inside the medical bay, Dr. Elena Volkov worked frantically to stabilize the Aetheran survivors. Their crystalline bodies pulsed with weak, irregular rhythms, each flicker representing a life hanging by a thread. The toxic environment of their homeworld had taken a devastating toll, and now they faced the additional stress of space travel. Their cellular structure is breaking down, Volkov reported, her voice tight with concern. We need to create a contained environment that mimics their original atmospheric conditions, or we'll lose them before we clear the system. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb was already 3 steps ahead. I'm repurposing Cargo Bay 2. Give me 20 minutes, and I'll have a hermetically sealed chamber with adjustable atmospheric controls. The human capacity for improvisation was about to face its ultimate test. While the Nexus Collective approached with overwhelming force, the rescue team scrambled to create miracles with limited resources. They cannibalized non-essential systems, repurposed equipment in ways its designers never imagined, and pushed their technology beyond every safety margin. Lyra, the Atheran chief scientist, watched the humans work with growing amazement. Her people had sent their distress signal as a final testament, never expecting rescue. The Nexus protocols were well known. Quarantined worlds were left to die, their inhabitants sacrificed for the greater good. Yet here were these beings from an unknown world, risking everything for strangers. Through a hastily assembled translation matrix, she managed to communicate with Captain Morrison. "Why?" she asked, her crystalline form pulsing with confusion. "Why risk contamination? Why challenge the collective?" Morrison paused in his coordination of the evacuation. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because if we were dying, we'd want someone to answer our call." The simplicity of his response struck Lyra like a physical blow. In all their advanced civilization, in all their millennia of technological achievement, the Aetherans had never encountered a species that placed compassion above calculation. The collective fleet found itself in an impossible position. Their weapons locked onto the human ship, but they couldn't fire without proving every accusation in the ongoing broadcast. Their authority was absolute, but that authority was crumbling as more worlds witnessed the drama unfolding above Athera. "You have 1 hour to begin deceleration," Admiral Zethtel finally declared. "After that, we will take necessary action." As the connection closed, Morrison turned to his crew. "We bought ourselves some time. Let's use it." The next hour saw human ingenuity pushed to its absolute limit. While maintaining their broadcast, the crew implemented a plan that seemed insane even by human standards. They would use Aethera's toxic atmosphere as a shield, diving into the upper layers where collective sensors would struggle to track them. "The radiation will fry our shields," the engineering officer protested. "Not if we modulate them using the Aetheran defense grid patterns," Webb countered. "Lyra showed me how their technology worked. We can adapt it." It was desperate, dangerous, and had almost no chance of success. Naturally, the humans attempted it anyway. The Endeavor plunged into Aethera's poisonous sky, its shields flickering with adapted alien technology. The collective fleet hesitated, their precise formations disrupted by this unexpected maneuver. Their protocols had no provision for pursuit into a quarantined atmosphere. Inside the ship, humans and Aetherans worked in perfect synchronization. Crystal matrices interfaced with human computers, creating hybrid systems that neither species fully understood but that somehow functioned. The toxic atmosphere that had doomed the Aetherans now became their protector, hiding them from collective sensors. "They're trying to adapt their scanning arrays," Kim reported. "But the interference is too strong." Morrison nodded. "Begin Phase 2. While hidden in the atmospheric soup, the Endeavor launched a series of probes. Each carried copies of their broadcast, medical data, and testimonials from both human crew and Aetheran survivors. The probes scattered in different directions, ensuring that even if the Endeavor was captured, their message would reach the wider galaxy. The collective fleet found itself fighting a battle it wasn't prepared for, not one of weapons and shields, but of information and public opinion. For the first time in 8 millennia, their absolute authority was being challenged not by force, but by truth. As the hour deadline approached, something unprecedented happened. Ships from other Nexus member species began arriving at the edge of the system. They weren't military vessels, but civilian craft, scientific explorers, and diplomatic envoys. They'd come in response to the broadcast, demanding answers, demanding to witness these events themselves. Admiral Zethtel faced a choice that would define the future of the collective. She could open fire on the human vessel, potentially starting an interstellar incident while the galaxy watched. Or she could acknowledge that perhaps, just perhaps, the humans had shown them a better way. "Collective fleet is standing down weapons," Kim reported, barely believing her own sensors. They're requesting permission to send medical teams to assist." The bridge erupted in cheers, but Morrison remained focused. "Grant permission, but maintain our broadcast. This isn't over yet." What followed was the most remarkable cooperative effort in galactic history. Nexus medical teams worked alongside human doctors, learning from each other while treating the Etheran survivors. Scientists from a dozen species collaborated on refining the cure Lyra had discovered. Engineers combined technologies in ways that defied conventional wisdom. The quarantine of Ethra wasn't lifted, it was transformed. Instead of isolation unto death, it became a focused effort to heal a world. The humans hadn't just saved 50 lives. They'd changed the fundamental approach to crisis management throughout the galaxy. But the true impact was yet to come. As the Endeavor prepared to depart with several Etheran ambassadors, including Lyra, they received an unexpected message. It came from the High Council of the Nexus Collective itself, requesting a formal meeting. Humanity was about to take its first steps onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors or suppliants, but as the species that had dared to answer a cry for help when no one else would. The journey from Earth to the Nexus capital would take weeks, even with collective transit corridors. During that time, the human crew and Etheran survivors forged bonds that transcended species barriers. They shared stories, cultures, and dreams for the future. They also prepared for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. Collective fleet entering sensor range, Lieutenant Kim announced. 6 dreadnoughts, 12 cruisers, and a containment vessel. They're broadcasting standard quarantine enforcement protocols. The bridge crew exchanged grim looks. They all knew what those protocols meant. Surrender or be destroyed. The Nexus Collective didn't make exceptions, didn't negotiate with quarantine breakers. Their doctrine was absolute. How long until they're in weapons range? Morrison asked. 40 minutes, sir. Maybe less if they push their engines. The captain turned to his crew. Options. We can't outrun them, the navigation officer reported. Their ships are faster, and they know this region better than we do. Can't outfight them either, added the tactical officer. Our weapons are designed for asteroid defense, not ship-to-ship combat. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had first detected the Etheran signal back on Earth, spoke up from her station. What if we don't try to run or fight? What if we do something they don't expect? All eyes turned to her. Chen continued. The Nexus Collective operates on predictable protocols. They expect us to either surrender or attempt to flee. But humans, we're not predictable. Morrison nodded slowly. What do you have in mind? We broadcast everything. Live stream our medical data, the Etheran condition, our containment procedures. Show the galaxy what's really happening here. It was audacious, possibly suicidal, and completely human. The Nexus Collective controlled information flow throughout their domain, carefully managing what their member species knew about quarantine worlds. But they couldn't control a signal broadcast on every frequency, in every language, with the power of the Endeavor's main transmitter array. Do it, Morrison ordered. As the collective fleet closed in, Phoenix 1 began the most important broadcast in human history. They showed the dying Etherans, the makeshift medical facilities, the desperate fight to save lives. They transmitted Lyra's testimony about her people's suffering and their discovery of a potential cure encoded in their own genetic structure. Most importantly, they showed humans and Etherans working together, proving that cooperation was possible even across species barriers. The response was immediate and unexpected. Throughout Nexus space, on worlds that had never questioned collective authority, citizens began to watch. They saw suffering they'd been told was necessary. They saw compassion they'd been taught was dangerous. They saw possibility where they'd been shown only fear. Collective fleet is hailing us, Kim reported. They're demanding we cease transmission. Keep broadcasting, Morrison replied. He opened a channel to the approaching fleet. Nexus vessels, this is Captain James Morrison of the Earth ship Endeavor. We are engaged in a humanitarian rescue mission. We have contained the contamination and are providing medical assistance to survivors. We request safe passage to continue our work. The response came from Admiral Zethtal, commander of the collective fleet. Her reptilian features filled the view screen, scales shifting through patterns of barely contained anger. Earth vessel, you have violated supreme quarantine protocols. You will surrender immediately for decontamination and judicial processing. Your broadcast is causing civil unrest throughout collective space. With respect, Admiral, Morrison replied, we won't abandon these people. We found evidence that the Etheran plague can be cured. They deserve a chance to live. Impossible. Our scientists studied the plague for decades before implementing quarantine. Lyra stepped forward, her weakened form still radiating dignity. Your scientists never asked us. The cure is within our genetic code, a natural defense that needs specific conditions to activate, conditions we can no longer create on our dying world. The admission sent shockwaves through both fleets. The Nexus had condemned an entire world to death without fully understanding the situation. The implications were staggering. Admiral Zethtel's scales darkened. Regardless, protocols must be maintained. Stand down your engines and prepare to be boarded. I can't do that, Admiral, Morrison said, but I can offer an alternative. What followed was the most unorthodox negotiation in galactic history. Morrison proposed that the Endeavor submit to full Nexus oversight, but only after reaching a neutral location where proper facilities could be established for the Etherans. He offered complete transparency, continuous monitoring, and full cooperation with collective scientists. In essence, he proposed working within the system while fundamentally changing it. They'll try to contain us, Chen warned during a strategy session. Classify us as a disruptive influence, maybe even quarantine Earth. Let them try, Morrison replied. We've shown the galaxy who we are. We're not perfect, we're not always logical, but we don't abandon people in need. That's our strength. Lyra, her crystalline form now stable thanks to the combined medical efforts, added her perspective. You've done more than save us. You've shown the collective that their way isn't the only way, that compassion and calculation can coexist. As the hybrid fleet approached the Nexus capital, sensors detected something extraordinary. Ships from every member species had gathered, not in military formation, but in welcome. The broadcast from Aethera had sparked discussions on countless worlds about the nature of civilization, the balance between safety and compassion, and the role of newer species in galactic affairs. The humans were no longer unknown outsiders. They were the Deathworlders who'd answered a call for help, the impossible species that had challenged 8,000 years of doctrine and won. The stage was set for the final confrontation, but it wouldn't be fought with weapons. It would be fought with ideas, with proof that sometimes the most logical choice was to follow your heart, and with the living testimony of the Etheran survivors. A new dawn. The Nexus capital world of convergence had never witnessed anything like the arrival of the human delegation. The planet's crystalline towers, designed to reflect the ordered perfection of collective rule, now cast their light on a scene of unprecedented chaos. Thousands of vessels from every member species crowded the orbital approaches, their crews eager to catch a glimpse of the beings who had defied galactic law and lived to tell about it. At the center of this maelstrom, the Earth ship Endeavor maintained its steady course toward the Grand Assembly. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge, flanked by his crew and the Etheran survivors they had rescued. Lyra's crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy as they approached the heart of the civilization that had condemned her world to death. Remember, Morrison addressed his team, we're not here to fight. We're here to show them a better way. The Grand Assembly chamber was a marvel of architectural precision, its walls formed from living crystal that resonated with the thoughts and emotions of those within. As the human delegation entered, the chamber's harmonics shifted, reflecting the unprecedented nature of this moment. Representatives from all 15 member species filled the tiered galleries, their attention fixed on the small group of humans and their Etheran companions. High Chancellor Vorthax, an ancient being whose species had founded the collective, presided from an elevated dais. His form, composed of pure energy contained within a humanoid shell, radiated authority accumulated over millennia. Captain James Morrison of Earth, the Chancellor's voice resonated through the chamber. You stand accused of violating the most sacred laws of our collective. You breached a quarantine zone, risked plague contamination, and broadcast classified information throughout our domain. What do you say in your defense? Morrison stepped forward, his military bearing evident, but softened by something the assembly couldn't quite identify. A mixture of determination and compassion that seemed uniquely human. High Chancellor, honored representatives, he began, we did violate your quarantine. We did risk contamination. And yes, we did broadcast the truth about what we found. But we did these things because they were right, not because they were permitted. A murmur rippled through the assembly. No one had ever spoken to the High Chancellor with such casual directness. Morrison continued, on Earth, we have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. When we heard the Etherin distress call, we had a choice. We could have done nothing like everyone else. We could have prioritized our safety over their survival. But that's not who we are. He gestured to Lyra and the other Etherin survivors. These people were dying, not because their condition was incurable, but because no one was willing to take the risk to help them. Your protocols, designed to protect, had become instruments of abandonment. Chancellor Vorthax leaned forward. You speak of risks as if they were mere inconveniences. The Etherin plague could have spread to other worlds, causing billions of deaths. But it didn't. Dr. Volkov interjected, stepping forward with her medical data. Because we took precautions, we adapted, we learned. The cure was there all along, encoded in Etherin DNA. They just needed someone willing to look for it. The medical evidence was irrefutable. The combined human Nexus medical teams had not only stabilized the Etherin survivors, but had developed a treatment that could potentially restore their entire world. The plague that had justified 2 centuries of quarantine could be eliminated within a decade. Lyra spoke next, her voice carrying the weight of her people's suffering. For 200 cycles, we called for help. We transmitted our research, our theories about the cure, our desperate pleas for assistance. The collective's response was silence, justified by protocols that valued theoretical safety over actual lives. She turned to address the assembly directly. These humans, from a world you dismissed as primitive, did what none of you would. They listened. They came. They saved us, not because it was safe or logical, but because it was right. The chamber's crystalline walls pulsed with conflicting emotions, shame, admiration, fear, hope. The ordered certainty of collective doctrine was crumbling before their eyes. A representative from the Meridian Commonwealth rose. If we abandon our protocols, chaos will follow. The quarantine system has prevented countless catastrophes. Has it? Dr. Chen challenged. Or has it simply prevented you from finding solutions? How many worlds like Ethra have you condemned? How many cures have you missed because you were too afraid to look? The debate raged for hours. Some species defended the old ways, citing statistics and historical precedents. Others, emboldened by the human example, spoke of reform and the need for compassion in governance. Through it all, the humans and Aetherins stood together, living proof that cooperation could triumph over fear. Finally, Chancellor Vorthax called for silence. The ancient being seemed to age before their eyes as he grappled with the implications of this moment. For 8 millennia, he said slowly, we have maintained order through isolation. We believe that separation was the price of survival. But these humans have shown us something we have forgotten. That civilization's strength lies not in its walls, but in its willingness to extend a hand across the void. He turned to Morrison. Captain, your actions have shaken the foundations of our society. You have forced us to question everything we believed about safety, about protocol, about the very nature of galactic civilization. For this disruption, you should be punished. The assembly held its breath. Instead, Vorthax continued, I propose something unprecedented. The collective formally invites Earth to join our assembly, not as a subordinate member, but as an equal partner. Your perspective, though dangerous to our established order, may be exactly what we need to grow beyond our self-imposed limitations. The chamber erupted in shock. No species had ever been offered immediate full membership. The process typically took centuries of observation and gradual integration. But these were not typical times. Morrison exchanged glances with his crew before responding. "We accept, but with conditions. The quarantine protocols must be reformed. Every isolated world must be reevaluated. And the Aetherians must be given full support to rebuild their civilization." "You make demands." Aetherian delegate scoffed. "We make suggestions," Morrison smiled. "Based on experience. We've shown that engagement works better than isolation. That understanding trumps fear. That's what we offer the collective, not just membership, but a new way forward." The vote that followed would be remembered as the turning point in galactic history. By a narrow margin, the Assembly approved not only Earth's membership but also a comprehensive review of all quarantine protocols. The age of isolation was ending. The age of cooperation had begun. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Human medical teams, working alongside collective scientists, began the systematic elimination of the Aetherian plague. Other quarantined worlds, hearing of Aethra's salvation, sent their own distress signals, and this time they were answered. The Endeavor became the first of many human vessels to join the collective fleet, but with a crucial difference. Where Nexus ships enforced isolation, human ships built bridges. They established contact with species deemed too dangerous, too different, too primitive. More often than not, they found not threats but potential allies, not dangers but misunderstood diversity. Lyra returned to Aethra as part of the restoration effort, accompanied by human advisors and collective resources. As her world's crystalline forests began to regenerate and its cities rose from the ashes, she often reflected on the cascade of events, triggered by one desperate signal and one improbable response. "We sent our call into the void expecting nothing," she told a gathering of multiple species during Aethra's first restoration celebration. "What we received was not just rescue, but a fundamental shift in how the galaxy sees itself. The humans didn't just save Aethra. They saved all of us from our own fear." Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison of the Combined Fleet, watched the celebration from orbit. The Endeavor had been retired from active service, transformed into a museum ship that orbited Earth as a reminder of humanity's first steps onto the galactic stage. But its legacy lived on in every human vessel that ventured into the unknown, in every crisis response that prioritized compassion over